The film opens by introducing us to Emma, a cheerful little girl who, from the moment she was born, was a handful for her mother, Hannah. As a child, Emma was a constant source of grief, always managing to get into some kind of trouble. She was a little troublemaker, running around with her friends, getting into fights, and coming home with her clothes torn and dirty. Hannah was always right behind her, cleaning up her messes and trying to keep her out of harm's way. But as Emma grew up, her problems only got worse. She wasn't only a bad kid, she also wasn't very good at school. Her grades were always in the gutter, and Hannah was a regular visitor to the school, where she was constantly humiliated in front of other parents and teachers. Emma's academic failures were a black cloud that followed them for years, and as she graduated from high school, she was hit with the gut-wrenching realization that she had never once made her mother truly proud. In a desperate 11th-hour attempt to make things right, Emma did something unthinkable. She forged a fake college acceptance letter, an act of sheer desperation. The document was a dead ringer for the real thing, so convincing that a friend who had failed the same entrance exam couldn't tell the difference. Armed with this masterful forgery, she handed it to her parents, who were instantly filled with pride. Hannah and her husband, overcome with emotion, threw a massive celebration for their daughter, inviting all their family and friends. For them, getting into a good college was a once-in-a-lifetime achievement, and they were going to show off their star child. But there was a fly in the ointment. Hannah had invited her frenemy, Jenny, a woman she couldn't stand because of her overbearing arrogance. Hannah thought this was her chance to finally get one up on Jenny, to make her eat her words. Jenny, as expected, showed up and immediately started bragging about her son, who was studying in America and planned to live and work there after he graduated. Hannah's heart sank. Emma's achievement suddenly felt like a drop in the ocean, a small fish in a big pond. In a classic case of keeping up with the Joneses, Hannah tried to change the subject, but it was too late. The atmosphere was thick with tension, which was only broken when Emma's aunt Daisy gave her a red envelope filled with money. Hannah, determined to show that they didn't need charity, immediately tried to give it back. A tug of war ensued, with Daisy insisting that Emma keep it and Hannah adamantly refusing. In the chaos, Hannah grabbed Emma's bag to take out the envelope, but she accidentally pulled out the real humiliating rejection letter. The lie, the celebration, and the pride all came crashing down in a single, gut-wrenching moment. On the humiliating walk home, the shame of the public reveal was eating Emma alive. She felt like a total failure, a big-time loser, and she couldn't stop the words from spilling out. She told her mother, Hannah, that all she ever wanted was to make her proud, but she had never been able to. But Hannah, a woman whose love knew no bounds, wasn't mad. It was as if she had already forgiven her daughter, and the sting of humiliation from the party was a distant memory. The two of them rode their bicycle in a comfortable silence, fantasizing about a future where Emma had made it big. Emma promised to buy her mom a new car, a fancy new house, and all the gold jewelry her heart desired. But in a cruel twist of fate, their moment of hope was shattered. A truck came out of nowhere, hitting them and sending them tumbling to the ground. In the hospital, Hannah was on a ventilator. Emma, who had only suffered minor injuries, was by her side, her heart pounding in her chest. She watched as her mother's life slipped away, her body still and lifeless. Emma was filled with a gut-wrenching grief, her hands trembling, her eyes swollen with tears, and her mind racing with all the things she should have said and all the things she should have done. She wished she could have just made her mom proud once in her life. In a moment of profound regret, the world around Emma shifted. When she opened her eyes, she was in the same hospital room, but it was eerily empty. She walked out into the hallway, the only sound a low hum coming from an old black and white TV. On the screen was a news report from the past, showing her hometown in a bygone era. She was in a world that she didn't recognize. Just then, she was sucked into the TV and suddenly fell from the sky and landed on a woman on the street below. A crowd of people rushed to help, helping the two to the hospital. When Emma finally came to, a man was standing over her. He introduced himself as Greg and demanded that she take responsibility for crushing his sister. Emma's jaw dropped. It was her uncle. But he didn't recognize her, and he thought she was a total weirdo. That's when it all hit her like a ton of bricks. She had traveled back in time to a period before she was born. Just then, a nurse's voice rang out the name Hannah. It hit Emma like a ton of bricks. The woman she had fallen on was her young mother. A whirlwind of emotions rushed through her, but before she could get to her, her uncle Greg, a man who was already suspicious of her, held her back, but it was too late. Hannah walked out and Emma's jaw dropped. Her mother was so young, so full of life, a stark contrast to the old, weary woman she had known. In a moment of sheer panic, Emma blurted out that she was from the year 2001. Greg was ready to call the police, but Hannah saw something in Emma's eyes that stopped her. She said Emma looked familiar and asked if she was her cousin from out of town. Emma, eager to get closer to her mother, immediately agreed. Just then, her Aunt Daisy showed up and broke the tension, reminding them that the TV sale was starting soon. Back in the 80s, buying a television was a big deal. They were a luxury item, and people would line up for hours with tickets to get their hands on one. They rushed to the store where they came face to face with Jenny, a woman who was just as ambitious and competitive in her youth as she was in her old age. The two women, fueled by a lifelong rivalry, started to butt heads. They were racing to get to the front of the line, and when they finally got there was only one TV left. Neither of them wanted to back down. Emma, with a plan, stepped in to help her mother. In a moment of pure genius, she pretended to be a victim, saying she had lost her sight when she was small and wanted the TV. Not one to give up, she then went on to claim that her brother was deaf and that their family was just a magnet for bad luck. The crowd, their hearts ached for her, and they all agreed that she should get the last TV. Hannah, a look of pride on her face, handed Emma the ticket and the money. In a moment of sheer triumph, Emma walked out of the store with the TV, making her mother the star of the show. Emma was overjoyed. Seeing her mother so happy filled her with a new purpose. She promised herself that she would spend every waking moment making her mother's life a masterpiece. The television wasn't just a piece of furniture back then. It was a symbol of status and prestige. Hannah's family was the first in their factory community to own one, and it was a moment of pure, unadulterated pride. The family's tiny living room became the talk of the town, and everyone, from young to old, gathered to watch the Volleyball World Cup. It was a carnival atmosphere, with neighbors packed together like sardines, their eyes glued to the screen. But Emma's eyes were only on one person. She didn't care about the game. She only cared about her mother, whose face was a beacon of happiness. Emma was filled with a newfound purpose, to make her mom even happier. Jenny, a woman who was a sore loser, couldn't stand it. After the game, she stormed over to Hannah's house, a look of pure fury on her face. She was not about to be outdone. She challenged Hannah to a volleyball match, a chance to get her revenge. Hannah and Daisy saw through her ruse and immediately refused. But Emma, who was an expert at reading her mother's mind, saw an opportunity. She remembered Daisy's story about a past volleyball tournament where Hannah's team could have won but didn't. This was their second chance, a chance to make her mom a champion. Emma tried to convince her mother to play. She promised her that if they played, something great would happen. After much prodding, Hannah finally gave in and told Daisy to get the team back together. But the next day, a crushing reality set in. No one showed up. Hannah didn't give up easily, so she went to meet them one by one, a mission to get her team back together. But all she got were a handful of excuses. Susie, the team setter, was busy with her crops. Emily, the team's ace, was worried about her baldness. Nina wanted to start a business, and Carrie was obsessed with art. As Hannah and Daisy were wallowing in their misery, a trio of thugs led by a man named John came calling. They had been sent by Jenny, a final act of revenge. John, a man with a menacing look, demanded that Emma hand the TV to Jenny. Hannah was ready to fight them off, but John gave Emma 5 seconds to make a decision. This final act of cruelty lit a fire in Hannah, a new resolve that was stronger than anything she had ever felt. She was no longer just playing a game. She was going to fight for her honor. She was going to find a way to get her team back together and make Jenny pay. Emma had a mountain of problems to solve, but she was determined to get her mother's team back together. She started with Emily, the team's ace who was on the verge of giving up because of her baldness. In a moment of sheer genius, Emma used her dog's fur to create a makeshift wig, a comical yet heartwarming solution that gave Emily his confidence back. Next, she went to the thugs led by John, a man who was still holding a grudge. Instead of fighting them, Emma offered them an olive branch. She gave them a tip about a famous city gang, a group that would help them become real players. In return for the information, she asked John and his men to help Susie with her massive harvest. The thugs, a group of overgrown boys, were happy to help, and they made quick work of the fields. She also helped Nina, who was desperate to make money. She introduced her to a gambling game, a way to make a quick buck without having to sell junk with his father. Lastly, she helped Carrie get a chance to read her poetry on the radio. a moment that filled her with pride. With all her hard work, Hannah finally had a full team. They started their first practice, but in a cruel twist of fate, Daisy broke her leg and couldn't play. Emma had to step in. The tournament began, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. Hannah's team was up against Jenny's, a grudge match that had been building for years. Emma was a nervous wreck, but she was ready to fight. She was told to serve first, but she failed. The ball went flying straight at Emily, knocking her in the head and revealing her balding. Embarrassed, Emily stormed off the court. The team was in a state of chaos, but Hannah didn't give up. She reminded them of all the things Emma had done for them, how she had helped them with their problems and brought them all together. The team, their hearts swelling with pride, went back to the court. Emma wanted to go after Emily, but Daisy told her to go back to the game. With only 5 players, they were at a disadvantage, but they weren't about to give up. Even a player short, Hannah's team put up a hell of a fight. They played their hearts out, but the points were hard to come by, especially with Emma's lack of skills. They were down to match point, and Jenny's victory was so close she could practically taste it. But in a moment of sheer desperation, when all hope was lost, Emily came back to the court, a look of steely resolve on his face and a hat on her head. But in a comedic twist, the wind knocked the hat, and she, once again, stormed off the court in embarrassment. Emma was ready to throw in the towel, but then something shifted inside her. She wasn't playing for a silly tournament anymore. She was playing to change her mother's future. The team received a serve from the opposing team, a powerful hit that seemed impossible to return. But in sheer determination, Emma smashed the ball back, and Hannah smashed it back and scored a point. Jenny tried to provoke her, but Hannah wasn't having any of it. She was confident, and she was ready to claim the victory. Hannah's fighting spirit was a sight to behold. It caught the eye of the factory manager, a man who believed that a person's true charisma came out when they refused to give up. The two teams fought fiercely, but in the end, Jenny's final smash was too powerful to return. Jenny's team won, and Emma's heart sank, but she was surprised to see that her mother wasn't sad. Hannah and her teammates were happy and proud that they had been able to compete. It was a bittersweet moment. Emma was shocked to learn that the first place prize was a simple flashlight, not a life-changing reward. She had been so wrong. The tournament wasn't about winning, it was about the journey. Just then, Hannah was called away to go on a blind date with someone. Emma thought this was her father, but a moment of sheer shock hit her. It was Bobby, the factory manager's son, and Jenny's husband in the future. While Hannah was on her date, Emma had a heart-to-heart with Daisy. Daisy explained that Hannah was chosen because of her charismatic performance at the tournament. Her resilience and fighting spirit had caught the manager's eye. Emma was stunned. Her mother's destiny had nothing to do with winning. It had everything to do with who she was on the inside. Just then, John's friend came to them, telling them that John's mother was in the hospital. When they arrived, they saw John's father scolding him, blaming him for his mother's illness. John's words were a bitter pill to swallow for Emma. He said he was a loser who had never made his mother proud. But unlike Emma's mother, John's mom survived. On the way home, Emma's head was spinning with a shocking realization. She had just seen her mother, Hannah, walking with Bobby. A thought hit her like a ton of bricks. If her mother married him, she might be happier. And in a gut-wrenching moment, Emma realized that her mother's happiness was more important than her own existence. The next day, Emma decided to take matters into her own hands. She went to Bobby's choir practice, a man who was surrounded by his admirers, and asked him how he felt about Hannah. She offered to play matchmaker, a selfless act of love, and was shocked to learn that Bobby was head over heels in love with her mother. Emma's heart sank. She knew that if Hannah married Bobby, she would cease to exist, but she knew her mother would be very happy if that's how it went. She then gave Bobby a movie ticket, telling him it was for a seat right next to Hannah. Then Emma went to her mother and told her to get ready for a movie night. At the theater, John approached them and feigned a small emergency that needed the assistance of Emma. It was a plan for Hannah to go inside alone. Hannah was excited to see Bobby, but their seats were in separate rows, a blunder that Emma didn't see coming. As fate would have it, it started to rain outside. John and Emma found shelter, and John suddenly confessed his feelings for her. He told her he had never met a girl like her, and he wanted to take her on a date. The movie ended, and Emma saw her mother walk out with another man. She went to Bobby and asked him what had happened. Bobby, visibly disappointed, explained that their seats were not together. Emma was heartbroken. She had messed up, but she wasn't about to give up. She arranged a double date for the next day, a boat ride where she would go with John and her mother would go with Bobby. It was a high-stakes plan, but she was willing to do whatever it took to make her mother happy. The boat date was a comedy of errors. Bobby had meticulously prepared a picnic basket filled with food, but in a cruel twist of fate, Hannah didn't like nuts. In a moment of sheer panic, Bobby decided to eat the whole basket himself. The result was a hilarious, humiliating disaster. He got a stomachache and, in a desperate attempt to not ruin the date, he jumped into the river to relieve himself. The date was an epic failure. The next day, a defeated Bobby told Emma that he had probably messed everything up. He felt like a total loser, but Emma wasn't about to let him give up. She told him to buck up, that this was just a minor setback. Bobby, burdened by his father's expectations, suddenly told Emma that he was tired of people saying he was nothing without his father. He wanted to prove his worth with his choir group. Emma told him to forget the choir and do something that would make Hannah laugh. She told him that her mother had a great sense of humor and that a funny guy would win her heart. Emma then taught Bobby a comedy routine from the future, a mashup of slapstick comedy, funny gestures, and upbeat music. The practice was a laugh riot, and Emma knew that this was the key to making her mom happy. The day of the performance arrived, and Bobby, a nervous wreck, got on the stage. The act was hilarious, but the crowd, a group of people who were afraid to laugh at the factory owner's son, was silent. Bobby's father, embarrassed by his son's antics, stormed off the stage. The act was supposedly a duet, but Daisy got stage fright and refused to go on. In a moment of pure desperation, Emma ran on stage to save the day. In a moment of sheer panic, she pulled down Bobby's pants, revealing his underwear. The crowd, which had been holding back their laughter, burst into a collective roar. Bobby, mortified, was about to leave, but he saw Hannah laughing and decided to go all in. The failed act suddenly became a smash hit. Later at dinner, Hannah told Emma that she had never laughed so hard in her life, and she was surprised to see that Bobby was so funny. Out of the blue, Emma told Hannah that she could predict the future. She began to predict her mother's life, a fairy tale filled with a handsome, successful husband and a daughter who was a certified genius and a beauty queen, destined for an American university. It was a perfect life, a life she had always dreamed of giving her mother. But Hannah wasn't having any of it. Her only wish, she told Emma, was for her child to be healthy and happy, a bitter pill to swallow for Emma. Tears streaming down her face, she said to her mom that she was a pure example of her wish. She was healthy and happy, but she was useless. The next morning, Emma woke up to Hannah sewing up a hole in Emma's pants, a hole that Emma said was a fashion statement. After she was done, she revealed a shocking piece of news. She was married. She showed Emma her marriage license, and Emma's world was turned upside down. Her mother had secretly been with Jack, Emma's father in the future, for 3 years. In a fit of panic, Emma tried to convince her mother to get a divorce, a desperate attempt to save her mother from a life she had already lived. But Hannah refused, telling her that she didn't know anything about her life choices. They fought over the marriage license, and in the chaos, it was ripped in half. Hannah was heartbroken. But in a moment of pure serendipity, Jack showed up, a man who was gentle and kind, and the missing piece of the puzzle. Hannah then introduced Emma to Jack. After that, she and Jack went to tell everyone about their marriage. Emma's heart swelled with love and regret. Her mother had always seen her for who she was, a beautiful, healthy child. She had never been a failure in her mother's eyes. In a moment of absolute clarity, Emma realized that she had been fighting for something that didn't need to be changed. With a new resolve, she went to find John, a man who was now a friend, to tell him goodbye. In a bittersweet farewell, Bobby came to say goodbye too. He confessed to Emma that he was leaving town to get out from under his father's thumb. His hope of being with Hannah was gone, but he made sure that Jenny got his position, a final act of kindness. After Bobby said his goodbyes, Greg came, knowing Emma was about to leave. Emma told him she was going to fly back to her time, a strange statement that left Greg confused. She was ready to fly, but nothing happened. Too tired to stand too long, Greg told her to rest and gave her a steamed bun to eat. As she ate, Greg commented on her pants, saying they had a funny pattern sewn on them. Emma shared a bit of her mother's genius, told him that Hannah had sewn them. She then shared that her mother was never good at sewing until she had to fix her daughter's pants all the time. In a moment of absolute clarity, Emma's mind went blank. Her mother should never have known how to sew in this timeline because she was never a mother here. The only explanation was that her mother was also from the future. It was a truth that hit her like a ton of bricks. Her mother knew who she was all along. The film reveals that when Hannah died in the future, she was also sent back in time. Because she died before Emma, She arrived in the past first, and she also witnessed Emma fall from the sky and tried to catch her, leading to her being crushed instead. In the hospital, Hannah made a selfless choice. She decided to pretend she didn't know her daughter so she could see her fight for a life she never had. She supported her daughter every step of the way, a silent guardian angel. Emma's heart ached with regret. She ran after her mother, tears streaming down her face, and as she ran, she saw flashbacks of her life, of all the sacrifices her mother had made for her. She realized that her mother's one and only mission in life was to make her daughter happy. When she finally found her mother, she was on her knees, begging her not to go. She looked her mother in the eyes and thanked her for everything. She told her that if she had another life, she would still want to be her daughter. With a heavy heart, Emma was transported back to the future. Long story short, Emma became a successful comedian, a woman who was not a loser, but a winner. She knew her mother was watching her from above, a silent presence that was always there, and she was happy, finally.